guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to another top 10. You may remember, I don't know if you've seen it, but about a month or so ago I did on my channel my top 10 sort of awesome endings to horror films that I thought were really great classic sort of endings to a horror film, and I did a top 10, which number one was The Wicker Man with the best ending sort of thing. So today we're doing my top 10 disappointing endings of horror films. Now, it doesn't mean these films are awful, because now I don't know backlash, all right? I don't want no silly comments, all right? Now, this isn't a judgment of the film. Most of these films I absolutely love and adore. And some of these are absolute classics. But I personally, myself, didn't like the ending. I thought it could have gone a better way, but it didn't. It went this way, and that's no reflection on the film. Some of these films were almost like 9, maybe some 10 out of 10s in here, but I didn't personally think the ending was that good. It disappointed me because, you know, when you get in a film and when you're a massive film watcher, after times you sort of like get your own visions in your head of how you would like this film to end. And a lot of the time, the film goes that way or surprises you, goes a different way, but is awesome. But these ones went a different way to what I would have liked, but they disappointed me. So I'll try not to spoil anything from the endings of the film. But, you know, I might say a couple of little things in there, but I will do my utmost best to not put any spoilers. But let's get on straight away. At number 10 is Resident Evil. The first of the series and the franchise. In fact, the whole film was pretty disappointing in a sense. Like if you were this is based on the video game now. If you were a massive fan of that sort of series of games, this was so withdrawn from that, with a few key maybe character names that were in there. But the actual film was so withdrawn from that sort of video game thing. It was more just sort of based upon it. But the ending just sort of fizzled out and doesn't actually achieve anything in the film. It didn't bring anything to a close. It was almost like, okay, well, that was that it, you know, because it's all based down in the Hive, which is like this place down underground, with all these sort of traps in there and stuff, and they're trying to escape it after the Red Queen has sort of activated them all and stuff like that. You're all going to die down here and all this sort of thing. But the ending just sort of was a bit anticlimactic, but it was still an okay-ish sort of film. Yeah, it's a zombie-esque sort of film, but it had good ideas. I think if it hadn't gone under the Resident Evil name, it might have been a bit more successful, and probably my mind would have been switched on to it a bit more. But the whole film was a little bit of a letdown. But the actual ending just sort of disappointed me, really, to be honest. But there we are. So this is the Blu-ray release of it. So number 10 is the first Resident Evil film. Again, just remember, guys, if any of your favourite films are in here, don't look at it to knock down your film. I love your films. I think they're amazing. But some of the endings just disappointed me. And this one is number 9. It didn't. It's one of them. It's a Video Nasty. And it's Last House on the Left. Now, the film, which is about a group of these horrendous people that pick out these poor 2 girls and sort of like take them to the countryside, and they just sort of like destroy their souls before killing them. And they kind of like, then they stumble across this house later in the film, and the house actually belongs to the parents of these girls that have been murdered. And it turns into like a revenge ending. Now, I would have liked, the ending I would have liked would have been that Krug and the crew that discovered this was the the family of the girls and took it out on them too. That would have been such a darker and grim um, ending to the film, which I would have loved. But it kind of turns into a revenge film at the end, and which was cool. But I was disappointed with it because I would have liked it to have gone darker, because it is a very dark, nasty little film, with a sort of a conclusion of like revenge, which I would have personally I would have preferred if it had gone the other way. But there we are. But it disappointed me, the ending. I just thought, oh really? But there we go. But it's still a good ending. But to me, it was disappointing because I would like to have seen it gone another way. So number 9 is Last House on the Left. Still a nasty little film. Still plays up to date. Number 8 is a Danny Boyle film, and it's 28 Days Later. Now, this is one of my sort of favourite British horror films in a lot of ways, but I didn't like the ending. The film starts off, the first 2/3 of the film were absolutely fantastic. The first part of the film, you've got Gillian Murphy going around London, which is now deserted because of this virus, and you've got all these virus-raised people, and the virus is called Rage, and they're roaming the streets, and he's trying to survive, and he meets up with a female and a male, and they try to stick together. And in the second part of the film, they meet a daughter and a father in a flat, and they sort of team up together to sort of get out of London, because they hear this radio message like, come up north, it's all this sort of thing, oh, it's safer up here, survival's up here. So they try and get out of London. And in the last third, which disappointed me, is when they get to the north, there's like these soldiers and army there, and they sort of like brutalise the survivors from London that have come up, the girl, the father, and Gideon and the girl, and they get sort of brutalised by these soldiers. And I'm just thinking, well, where are you going with this? I loved the first 2 parts because it was like a survival horror, and now it's turned into this sort of like sadistic sort of cult sort of soldiers. And I'm just thinking, where are you going with that? And I'm a little disappointed with it. I would like them to go on up north and had the same sort of struggles as the dark 2/3 of the film. I just think it sort of it just went a direction I didn't like. I just thought, no. Now 28 weeks later, I loved the ending of that film. I thought it was really, really cool, about the young lad and the young girl surviving through being the only 2 kids left in UK after their two parents end up succumbing to the sort of like the disease and stuff like that. It's a great ending, and it's a great film. And 28 Days Later is a fantastic film. It's a 9 out of 10 film to me, but the ending just didn't click with me. I just didn't like that whole sort of army bit. It's just, I don't know. Why would it be like that? Why would they be like that? I just didn't get it. But it would have been other directions it could have gone. Was there was an army up there, and they gone a little bit Day of the Deadish, where you've got an army up there, and you've also got these scientists there trying to control these sort of zombies. That would have been another sort of way of doing a really good ending to the film. But it ended in the sort of these just horrible soldiers that were there just to abuse these 4 survivors. And I'm just thinking, why? That's a difference. It sort of took it out of that sort of genre film and took it another direction, what I just was disappointed by. I mean, I expect a lot of people loved the ending and thought, oh, that was really cool. But to me, it just disappointed me. I thought, no, there's so many other ways this film could have gone. personally, I would like to have gone up there and found that it was no different to London, and you know, all their sort of hopes and dashes were sort of like deemed. It doesn't mean it's got to be a bad ending. Yes, they could have found somewhere where they could survive, which would have been really, really cool, like somewhere in the Yorkshire Dales or somewhere like that, where the population is fragmented. It could have been something like that, but that's just me and my taste. But yeah, disappointing ending number 8 to me was 28 Days Later. Number 7 is another sort of franchise film, and it was the latest or the last one in the franchise of Scream. I love the film. The film I scored highly. I think I scored it a 9 out of 10 when I reviewed it on my channel. But the ending, didn't like it. And I'll tell you why. It's simply because of one thing that lately American films have been doing a lot over the past sort of 10 years. And that is giving us a Scooby-Doo ending, which is great for Scooby-Doo, but anyone with a brain can work out the ending. But they feel the need to explain. Oh, because you know, they sort of like get our sort of heroes all ready to be killed, and our protagonists are there, and they explain what was happening, who has did what. I think we don't need to know that. It takes it out of the film. It takes that horror element out of the film when they're explaining it to us. So everyone's going, oh, okay, oh, don't need that. Most people could have already worked that out in their head. I kind of worked it out. It was that guy in the first place. In about 15 minutes of the film, I sort of, he's the killer. And but they felt the need to explain it, and that spoiled it for me. That was disappointing. I'm just thinking, why don't do that? And any sort of no American director's going to be watching this video ever. But if you did, don't do it. All right, don't do it. Most other sort of countries' horror films don't feel the need to explain the story, what's happened. There's no need to. We don't need a Scooby-Doo ending, you know. All it needed at the end was him to say, I would have got away with it too if it weren't for you meddling kids. But yeah, it just sort of takes it out of the film. But the film overall is fantastic. The fact that they took it to a city and away from the town where it was before, and I liked that. I thought it was a really cool sort of like aspect of the film. Really good. But it just sort of, yeah, it kind of just disappointed me with the ending. But really cool film though. So number 7 disappointing end to a film was the latest Scream. Scream 6. Right, classic now at number 6. This is where I'm probably going to get people commenting. So number 6 disappointing ending to me was Wes Craven's, again, Nightmare on Elm Street, the first one. Loved the film. Fantastic, classic film, great cast, well played out, but the ending was silly. And I just thought, oh, why? What's that? The letterbox scene. It's just like, what's that about? It's just silly, and I'm just thinking, yeah, we come to sort of like conclusions. What's happening? Why that sort of silly end scene? It just sort of like disappointed me when I just thinking, no, this obviously spawns loads of sort of like sequels, but the original ending I thought was silly, and I just thought, no, you just sort of comically ended that film, and I was thinking that's not the way to go. End it on a dark note, you know, which would have been really cool. You know, the letterbox scene was just daft. You could have just had the letterbox scene, but the hand come through, you know, and sort of scrape up and go in, and that sort of thing would have been pretty cool. But I didn't like that. Everyone's probably seen it, but the woman gets poured through the letterbox, and I'm just thinking, it's just, and it looks silly and it looks crazy. And I just think, what a silly way to end such a great film. So yeah, I was disappointed with the ending of that. Sorry guys, if it's one of your favourite movies, it is a classic and amazing. But number 6, disappointing ending to me was Nightmare on Elm Street 1. There we are. Number 5 is a British horror film. I'm sure it's Neil Marshall. Can't remember the director, but it's Dog Soldiers. Again, there's other points in the film that disappoint me. Now, this is about a group of soldiers in Scotland on a training mission, and they sort of stumble across this sort of. They're actually been sent up there to be sort of like almost like food fodder for these family of werewolves that are living up there, and they're surviving out in this sort of hut where they meet these locals and stuff like this. There's a couple of things that disappoint me right through the film. One, the most thing that disappointed me in the film is all the football chatter. And I'm just thinking, stop it. I don't mind football. I really don't. But I hate that sort of camaraderie over it. This sort of like people way they talk about it, and like they talk about the 1966 World Cup still like it's the only thing that's ever mattered to any man or male person in Britain. And every male in Britain is a massive football fan, and yeah, they're going to think that's great. What a great fan. And I hated that because it's just like, no, just stop it. Make the film more. Doesn't have to have anything to do with football. Why can't we just talk about anything else but football? And they talk about it quite a bit, and they make little references throughout the film. And at the end, they make a, that if you've ever seen the 1966 film, oh, they think it's all over now, but it is now. It's like that sort of thing, and it just sort of silly. And I liked a lot of the film. I liked that some of the key characters of the film, Sean Pertwee being one, sort of like meets their demise and stuff like that. And I think that's really cool. It's a great way to play horror films, is to always give you that element of surprise. But it was the most predictable ending of most horror films could say, oh, this is going to happen, this is going to happen. Oh, yeah, I knew that was going to happen, And it kind of like didn't bring anything new. And that's probably the problem with Dog Soldiers in an all-round thing. It didn't bring anything new to this genre. It's just took all bits of other films, put them together, and out we go. It's kind of like if you take The Howling, where it's like all set in this sort of like commune in this sort of area. This is in an area where it's deserted, and it's like the locals there are sort of werewolf. So it didn't bring anything new, and the ending was completely predictable. Like I said, I'm not telling you endings, guys, just in case you want to check them out. And it disappointed me. I just thinking, no, don't make this spread. What they could have done is got one or two of the soldiers infected by the werewolves, gone back to their base, and they would have had a whole food feast and spread it around, and then that whole soldier base turned into whatever. There's so many sort of darker ways it could have gone and spread throughout the country, but it kind of ended in a more predictable way, which disappointed me in a way. But there we go. Number 5 is Dog Soldiers. Number 4 could be quite a few people's disappointing ending, and it is Freddy versus Jason. Again, it was a film that was highly anticipated because everyone's always said, wouldn't it be great if these slasher icons actually met in a film? And they did. They brought one out, and it started off fantastic. It was really cool. It was really, really cool because it was like Freddy was there trying to kill these people, but that his dreams weren't strong enough to sort of kill them, so he sort of calls upon Jason to come and do his evil work for him, and Jason come and does some mighty kills, which are really cool. But then obviously things take a turn not in Freddy's way, and then Jason obviously comes and goes against Freddy. When Freddy thinks he's done with Jason, he can easily get rid of him, but we all know that Jason's unkillable. And so that's a really cool premise of the film. But in the ending, just sort of like, oh, really? Was that the ending? It was like there was a battle between the two. We had a victor, but then the other one was still alive. And it was just like, oh, really? And I believe there was supposed to have been Freddy versus Jason versus Ash, which never sort of like appeared. And there was also talk of Freddy versus Jason versus Michael, and that never appeared. But there we go. It's still a good fun slasher film. It's got some great. It's a great popcorn movie. Really cool. It's not really anything to do with either franchise. It's just bringing these two characters together in an all nonsense storyline with great kills and great seeing two icons in one film. But yeah, the ending just disappointed, and there we go. So number 4 is Freddy versus Jason. Number 3 is a Tobe Hooper film, and no, it's not Texas Chainsaw Massacre, because that was in my top 10 awesome endings. It's Poltergeist. Once again, a very predictable and lame ending when they find out that the families that have been haunted by this poltergeist, where they captured the young girl, Carrie Ann, and put her through the TV, and she's lost in the house and all this sort of thing, which is great. And then they finally get her back and all this, and they find out the house is built on an old Indian burial ground, and the house sort of folds up and disappears. I just thought, what was that about? Just leave the house as it was. It's again, it's a comical kind of ending, which sort of took out all that mystique and sort of film from the film. After enjoying the sort of spectacle of the film, which it is a really cool 80s cinema popcorn film, and it's really great with a great cast, played it really well. And then they just had that bit with the house sort of self-involved in itself, and it just looked silly, and just thought, right, okay, well that's silly, because that sort of spoiled the ending. Just move out the house, and yes, and then have that ending where they go to a hotel and they put the TV outside. Now, that was fun, but that bit with the house bit was just disappointing to me. I just thought, well, why have you done that? But there we go. That's the ending that they choose, and it wasn't for me, so I was disappointed by the end. So number 3 was Poltergeist. Number 2 is going to be, once again, something else I'm going to be, it's the greatest zombie film ever made. But yeah, the disappointing ending to me is George Romero's Dawn of the Dead. Again, as you kind of discovered throughout this video, I like a bleaker ending to the film, where the film is a lot more bleaker, with this sort of like two survivors just getting away. And I'm just thinking, yeah. And they did the same sort of ending in Day of the Dead, but it worked in Day of the Dead. It worked in Day of the Dead just because of the sort of format and form that they had to get away from, because these people were hounded by the soldiers as well as the zombies. Here, it's just, they were locked up in this supermarket, this sort of shopping mall, and and I'm just thinking, wow, the film is fantastic. To me, it's pretty much a 10 out of 10 film. I just didn't like the ending. I liked it to have been more bleaker. I'm trying to think what they could have done with this. They could have done where they took off in the helicopter and there was no fuel, and you just see like the propellers stop, and then it drops out a picture, and then the film ends. That would have been really, really cool. I don't want anyone to survive these films, do I? And it just sort of thought, well, there's just so many better ways it could have ended. But that was the difference between the George Romero zombie films and the Italian ones. I like the Italian ones more because they were a lot more sort of like the endings that I like, apart from my favourite zombie film of all time, which is the George Romero's Day of the Dead. I did like the ending of that. I thought that was a good conclusion, and I thought that's when that should have stopped. Obviously, he went on to do Land of the Dead, Diary of the Dead, but I would have liked it to have stopped there, because I think that's a great ending, because your imagination now playing what's happened. Are they going to find this place of island on their own, survival, or are they going to land somewhere worse? And I suppose that is the way you could have looked at it this way, but at the time I was like, oh, no, man. Stop giving us happy endings. We don't need the happy endings. These films are meant to be. There's no happy ending, but there we are. Dawn of the Dead's my second disappointing ending. Now, to me, the most disappointing ending to a horror film at number one is of an amazing trilogy of films, and it is The Final Conflict, Omen 3. Again, a fantastic series of films. They're in my top 10 horror films of all time. I prefer them over The Exorcist, just because this is more of a sort of proper story. But we're looking at the ending of number 3. Great film, with a great cast. Sam Neill playing Damien and etc. Great cast, great kills, great film, great storyline. I even quite like the idea of a cult that are following him. But then we get to the ending climax at the old church, and I just think, what an amazing series of films, and you've ended it like that. Yeah, I'm not going to say what it is, just in case you've not seen it, but it's another daft ending to the film, you know. And I just think, no, you know, I don't mind this one. Actually, I don't mind this being a happy ending, but the way they did it was just like executed. I thought, well, no, that's daft, you know. Why do we need to see this almighty light or almighty archangel sort of thing? And I'm just thinking, just let our imaginations do that. Don't show us stuff. And sometimes I think that's what can ruin the end of a film. Now, it doesn't ruin the film. I have reviewed it on my channel, and I have given it a 10 out of 10. I gave all 3 of them a 10 out of 10 because they're all incredible films. But that is a disappointing ending to that franchise, if you like. Yes, they did a reboot sort of thing, which I didn't like, and they've done obviously a prequel, the first Omen, which was absolutely incredible, which fitted in with the films really well, and I loved it. And but the ending of that, I was just thinking, oh wow, because you couldn't really carry it on after that, because it's like this story is about the son of the devil, and it's like Damien who is the son of the devil, and it gets his demise in the third one, so you can't carry on, so you can only go backwards really. But yeah, unfortunately I didn't like the ending, guys. So my number one worst disappointing ending to a horror film is The Final Conflict, Omen 3. There we are, guys. I'm sorry if I've included any films that you love. Again, like I said, most of these films are 10 out of 10, 9 out of 10 films for me. I love them, absolutely love them. And me disappointed with the ending hasn't really taken it away from me loving that film. If anything, I kind of like it more. Sometimes I like to be disappointed. I know that sounds weird, but because it didn't go the way you want, it's just that somebody was a bit daft and a bit silly or highly predictable. And I was just thinking, yeah, they could have been executed so much better. Because I do like being my prediction of an ending's being wrong, because it just shows that the filmmakers got a different plan to me or idea. And sometimes they shock me, and sometimes they were absolutely much better than what I thought were going to be, you know. But these ones disappointed. And I hope this video hasn't disappointed you. I'm sorry if it has. Anyway, I'd like to give a shout out to Horror Hands, Horror Geek, Man v Film, RS Design, Pizzawell. I'm Icelord, Cat Watchers, Horror Movies, Grumpy Andrews, Horror House, and a Maniac. And a massive shout out to my lad. Till next time, look after yourselves, look after one another, and I really hope I see you all soon.